So I decided to do 10 more worst songs of all time. As a commenter, he said it's not really the worst songs, but probably the most overrated. And yeah, I agree with that. I don't see much point of doing, a list containing Baha Mans who let the dogs out or some shit like that. So I'll move on to other things that are more interesting to talk about. Anyway, the first one is the Beatles with Hey Jude. I thought of doing the long and winding roads, but the thing that really irritates me about that song is the botched production, and Paul McCartney hates the production made by Spector, so there is no point of doing anything against it. Hey Jude, well, for a guy who says that the Rolling Stones were a blues cover band, this is just a fucking silly song. It just sounds horrible. It has 7 minutes, which the last 4 minutes are just na 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 nas. In a time that the Cream were doing some, at least live, some really long blues jams, I really wish the Beatles were a blues cover band. And this would be the future of rock, at least in the mainstream. The Cream would be followed by Led Zeppelin and maybe by Black Sabbath in its heavy metal direction. So I come to the second song, which Black Sabbath changes. I can only explain this song as being some effects of cocaine. They did a ballad, which for me always sounded awful in the record. Just make some bad track ordering in that record. It just comes in and stops a flow that goes on there. But the thing is, can a bad song become a good song in another context? And the answer is yes. There is a guy, soul music guy called Charles Bradley, and he made a cover song of of Changes, and he explained that it was his relation with his dying mother or something like that made him do it, and he heard the song and he thought it matched the situation. He gives a very soulful and vocals to it, and I think it works much better than than Ozzy doing it or his daughter, which is even worse. So in any way, I move to number 3, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Lucky Man. Now, Emerson, Lake and Palmer have some weird album track choices. What happens is that almost always at least, a weird song like Jeremy Bender, a song which is based on some classical stuff, really ripping it off to some point, the Barbarian, stuff like that. There's always the ballads, and luckily you have an epic, which is the best song, like Tarkus or Carnival 9. Although the lyrics of Tarkus are horrible, I just musicianship of that is really great. Lucky Man apparently was the first song Greg Lake ever wrote. He wrote as a kid, tells some dumbed down story of a guy who feels lucky for his life. It's a very simple song, and I think it detracts a little bit from the prog greatness they could have sometimes, doing these really big epics, which I really wish they only played that. And yeah, just don't like this song. Moving on to another prog band, it is Genesis. Now somebody will go, oh, he's gonna do some song with Phil Collins, and it's not really my point, But a lot of people bash the Phil Collins phase, and I don't like bashing it anymore. So I'll talk about I Know What I Like. And this is a song which goes nowhere really. Some of these songs, there are some anthemic qualities about them. So a lot of people will sing in a stadium the song together with the band. And I always thought these songs were really the worst ever. That just, that is a masquerade on the badness of it. For example, Hey Jude is, every time Paul McCartney plays it, everybody sings it, and they go, I don't know, for 10 minutes with that na 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 na, and it just sounds awful. Same thing with I Know What I Like, the song that really doesn't say much, in a time that they were saying more things with Peter Gabriel. Is one of the most silly songs of that time, and yeah, I don't care about it. Next, Iron Maiden, Fear of the Dark. It's really bad to hear a guy, what was his age at that time? 40 years old, singing that has Fear of the Dark, and that goes for 7 minutes. And probably is even longer live, but I don't really pay attention to Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is really popular here where I live, and people always bother me trying to push Iron Maiden for me to hear when I was a kid. I just don't like the band, and this is one of their most silly songs. It is in the end of the Bruce Dickinson era, the first part of it in any way. Just sounds awful. And yeah, I just don't like it. I could put another 10 songs of Iron Maiden here, even ones which are really pretentious, and it's even more disliked for me because Steve Harris can't really write. It just sounds silly. This one's just silly, which is his face, and I hate it. Next one, Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit. This one is funny. So, it has very silly lyrics. Apparently Cobain didn't like it, maybe because it got very popular, but I think it's another song which has an anthemic quality. The crowd goes with the song. I just always thought it was really silly, and I always thought that the best part of Nevermind was actually the last songs, the second part of the album, side B, whatever. It's not the first one, and I know, a mulatto, an albino, a mosquito, my libido. That's an awful song, and it takes a lot from Pixies as well. This is Monkeys Go to Heaven Part 2 or something like that. I never liked this song, and I never will. Next one, Oasis Wonderful. Around the same time as grunge, it appeared Britpop, and for our disgrace, the most popular band of Britpop was actually the worst one, which was Oasis. And one of the most popular songs of Oasis is one that is really bad, which is Wonderwall, a song that every shithole person plays in the guitar to impress some girls or something like that. First of all, Liam Gallagher doesn't sing well this song. The lyrics is just awful. There are worse lyrics even in the records with Champagne Supernova. But this being the most popular song of the record, it's really bad and shouldn't be. 8. The Strokes, Last Night. I remember when I was really, I was in my 14, 13 years old, and Strokes released their first record, and they all went, this is gonna save rock, and sounds like crap. It's all muffled up, just some retro type of crap. And Julian Casablancas always sound like he was kidnapped and muffled up and pumped with drugs. And the only reason I can explain this band being really popular is the money behind the band. They were all rich guys from New York, and this sounds awful. And everybody now is saying that it was even better than they imagined. Pitchfork altered the rating for some of the records. Putting up the rating. It's just awful. It sounds awful. It sounds awfully simplistic, dumb, and it is really badly produced. It sounds like some retro obsession that rules music since. Number 9, U2, Elevation. Another record at around this time that was overhyped. So U2 ended that phase, that Baudrillardian, McLuhan type of phase, which was really ironic, taking jabs at the use of technology. It was really silly sometimes in songs like Discotheque, but this one is one of the worst. And all that you can leave behind is one of the worst records they ever did. I believe it was made with Eno Ilanoa. Eno can do some great records and do some really bad ones, and that's one of the worst he ever did. And starting with this single, which is Beautiful Day, which just sounds awful. And then we come to Elevation, which supposedly was the rocker of the album. It sounds so thin and harmless. I remember it was soundtrack to the awful Tomb Raider movie, and yeah, it's just crap. Number 10, White Stripes, Seven Nation Army. So nobody really remembers what was happening at that time. So the third album of the White Stripes got somewhat popular, and then a guy made a version of the album playing bass into it and inserted into the internet. So I think this got to the mind of the White Stripes, and they did the next album with some at least bass sounding guitars. And Seven Nation Army for me is part of this obsession, we don't need bass, so I'm gonna do a bass sounding guitar. And it just repeats the same things over and over. I just hate this song. It was overplayed also. The World Cup I believe the World Cup in Russia, all games had this song at some parts. It just, played a lot. It's really simplistic and dumb, but it's not the most interesting song on the records. Really nothing happens there until, I don't know, the guitar solo, which is kind of interesting. And that's it. That's 10 songs that I hate. Worst songs of all time, whatever. Feel free to, I don't know, to say I'm a dumb fuck. So, yeah, that's it. Bye-bye.